Shalom. I am Prophet Jonathan Bridges, and welcome to Building Bridges, where we not only desire to build people, but to build ourselves in the things of Yahweh and to create bridges or connections to people all over the world. Well, we're still in this same topic. The title of this message is I'm Built for This, and this is part 4. And as I said before, I'm not going to spend a lot of time recapping. I desire that you go back and listen to the other episodes to bring you back up to speed. Part 1, part 2, part 3, and here we are in part 4, and 4 representing creation. And where we left off, we were in the book of Genesis, chapter 1. And in this chapter, the information that we was dealing with was when Yahweh was creating the world and also creating man. And what we figured out is that man, when he was speaking of man in Genesis 1, he was speaking of a species. In other words, he was giving a name to a group. And what we found out that when he spoke of man, it wasn't just indicative of man, meaning the male. It was indicative of man and female, male and female. So follow me real quick. Let's go to Genesis chapter 1, and we're going to go straight to verse 27. And what we're looking at here is when Yahweh said he was going to create man. So Genesis 1 verse 27 reads, "So Yahweh created man in his own image. In the image of Yahweh created he him, male and female created he them." So what we have here is what's called the law of first mention. And what the law of first mention teaches is that the first time a word or a phrase appears in the scriptures, that means that it's important. The first mention often establishes the precedence, the pattern, or the biblical concept that occurs throughout the rest of the Bible. So in other words, when Yahweh says something for the first time, that means this is what he established and this is what we need to follow. Are you following me? So Yahweh said in this scripture, male and female created he them. So what Yahweh was establishing in the law of first mention, that this is the direction that he was about to take the man and the woman. Are you listening to me? So Yahweh, what he's doing is that he's directing the sexuality of male and female. And what happens is, I was speaking to my wife about this, is that people want to start to pick out and pull out what's in the scripture for their own use. People want to remove out of the Bible what they feel like they don't want to be responsible for. But in the beginning, it was so that the Father created male and female. And what he said was that he desired that they be fruitful and multiply. And in that, we found out when it was speaking of fruitful, it was speaking of the man, meaning that he was full of seed. And not only full of seed, he was full of fruit, or the 9 fruits of the Spirit. So what Yahweh is getting to is that there's an order or a precedence that he is setting in place. Male and female created he them. So what am I getting to? The scriptures didn't say male and male created he them. It didn't say Adam and Steve. It didn't say Eve and Sandra. Are you following what I'm saying? So Yahweh is establishing something. If you take something out of the scriptures, what you have to understand is that you have to be careful, because if you take something out, better yet, let me put it like this. I'm going to allow you to take out what it is that you want to take out of the scriptures. But when you do that, you have to be careful, because when you pull that one thing out, it's going to upset the balance of it. What were we talking about in a couple messages back was that Yeshua, he was establishing a type of man. And he said upon this foundation, he was going to build his ecclesia, or he's going to build his church. So what we were dealing with then was that the foundation had to be sure, or Yahshua. Are you seeing what I'm saying? So Yahweh was trying to make sure that we understood that there was a delicate balance that had to take place at that time. Male and female created he them. So the man has the seed and the man gives the seed to the woman. This is the order of things. You can't argue this. You can't fight this. So when he gives the seed to the woman, what we found out is that the woman was the incubator. So when you give the woman the seed, she incubates it. In other words, what she does is that she increases it. So if you give your woman seed, she gives you what? A baby. She don't give you back what it is that you gave her. She increases it. The seed becomes a baby. So if men, and I'm speaking specifically to the men, if you give your woman the 9 fruits of the Spirit, as we found out was love, peace, patience, kindness, self-control. If you give your woman these things, what she's going to do, she's not going to give it back to you the way it was. She's going to increase it. So what we found out about the incubator was that the incubator was responsible for creating an atmosphere that was controlled. In other words, conducive for the growth or maturity of what's going into it. So when she incubates these things, this love, this peace, this patience, this kindness, this gentleness, this meekness, this self-control, she's going to create an environment. In other words, your house is going to be filled with the things that she's incubating. Oh, come on here. When you think about it, men, how many times have you left your house and when you're on your way back to the house, you didn't want to come back into the house? You didn't want to come back into the house because the environment was not conducive for the level of peace that you wanted. And blessedly, I have a wife who has the ability to cultivate an environment. And when I give things to her, she takes that and increases it and creates an atmosphere where it's comfortable for me to function properly. So this is what Yahweh is saying, is that he needs that male and that female in place so it can be cultivated. And men, think about it. If she is an incubator, if you give her the fruits of the Spirit, she's going to increase those things, as we said and established. If you give her a seed, she'll give you back a baby. But if you give her hell, yeah, what's going to end up happening, she's going to produce more hell. So you wonder why things aren't happening and working correctly in your house, why there's no peace. Men, you have to think about what it is. What is the seeds that you're depositing in your atmosphere? What are the seeds that you're depositing into your wife? What are the seeds that you're depositing into her mind or into her womb so that she can bring it to fruition? Think about that. So this is the law of first mention. Male and female created he them. Right? So let's move on. We're going to go to Genesis 2, chapter 2, 4 through 9. So chapter 1 up to where we're going into chapter 2, what this is telling us is that everything up to the point of chapter 1 is actually in Yahweh's mind. This is about to get real heavy right here. So all of creation that happened in chapter 1, the chapter 1 is actually giving us an insight or a view at what's going on in Yahweh's mind. In other words, what chapter 1 is a representation of is things that have not yet come into fruition and things that are not yet tangible. You don't believe me? Follow on. We finna really peel this thing back. So what you have to understand with Yahweh is that Yahweh does not exist in time. He's not trapped to a place. He's not trapped into time. So when Yahweh thinks something, it instantaneously happens when he thinks it. But to us, existing in time. A lot of times when Yahweh says something, the fact that we exist in time, it seems to us like it's taking hours, days, years, thousands of years for it to happen. But when Yahweh think it and then he speaks it, it comes into fruition. But what we're looking at is this space in between chapter 1 and chapter 2, where everything that he created is in his mind. So when he was creating us or manufacturing us and programming us, this means that we were still in the spirit realm. He had not yet set us on the earth. And I'm finna prove it to you. Genesis chapter 2, verses 4 through 9. All right. And it reads, "This is the account of the heavens and the earth when they were created, when Yahweh made the earth and the heavens." Verse 5, watch this. "And no shrub of the field had yet appeared on the earth, and no plant of the field had yet sprung up, for Yahweh had not sent rain upon the earth, and there was no man to till the ground." Listen to that. "But streams came up from the earth and watered the whole surface of the ground." So look at this. We done read chapter 1, and chapter 1 specifically told us about day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, and day 6. And what we were looking at, again, we were actually looking at what was going on in Yahweh's mind. So it says here in chapter 2, verse 5, it says no shrub of the field had yet appeared. But wait a minute, didn't it say back in Genesis 1 that he created all of this? Pay attention. "And no plant of the field had yet sprung up, for Yahweh had not sent rain upon the earth." And look at this. "And there was no man to till the ground." But didn't we just read in chapter 1 that he created man in his image? So what this is giving us a glimpse of is that Yahweh had created these things in his mind, just like us. When we get an idea for an invention, it happens in our mind first, and then when we speak it, me speaking it gives you the opportunity to read my mind. Why? Because my words are actually my thoughts, the things that were in my mind. So now we're at the point that Yahweh is getting ready to set man on earth. So Yahweh said, "I am going to take this man that's properly functioning and place him on earth." So what this scripture is getting to is that Yahweh is saying, if this man is functioning properly that I created, he should be able to bring into fruition what is on my mind. This is what the scripture is saying to us. There was no shrubs, and that there was no plant, and that there was no man. So Yahweh is saying that I have made this man, I have manufactured this man, and I have programmed him. And once I set him on the earth, then and only then are the shrubs and the plants are going to start to come into fruition. So Yahweh is saying, when man, listen men, when you are functioning properly, then and only then what's in my mind will it come to fruition. I know this is heavy. I know this is deep. It was deep when Yahweh gave it to me. So he said that there was no man to till what? The ground. So Yahweh saying once man is in position, everything else can come into fruition. It's my little chance to give me a little rhyme in. I'm always talking about bars. So men, once you're in position, Yahweh said everything can come into fruition. Listen, it's right there in the scriptures. We read in chapter 1 that he created all of these things he created in his mind, but he goes on in chapter 2 to say that nothing sprung up and he needed a man to till the earth. And once he tilled the earth, then and only then were things able to spring up. And look at the word fruition. Y'all know I like to play with words. When you spell fruition, it's actually fruition. So what it is, it's a compound word. So Yahweh is saying that when things come into fruition, it's going to be our fruit. Shun. What is shun? Shun is a suffix. Yes, prefix is in the front. Suffix is in the back. Yeah. Shun is a suffix, which means action. So Yahweh is saying, once I have this man that's functioning properly, that I manufactured, that is programmed properly, and he understands that he's a man and he needs a womb man. And once he understands this, then and only then will his fruit be put into action. Look at that. Fruition. Look at that word, fruition. That means when it comes into fruition, that means that your fruit now has action. Whew, goodness gracious. I told y'all this was going to be heavy. So right here, Yahweh is saying that now that I have the man here on the earth, his thought is that he should be functioning properly. And what happens a lot of time, men, is that we're not functioning properly. So that means if he places you in a place and you're dysfunctioning, that means that there's a problem. If you're not operating according to the law first mentioned, that male and female created he them, and men, you're not operating in the fact that he put seed inside of you, and the fact that he put the 9 fruits of the spirit inside of you, and that we should be treating our women a certain way, which means correctly according to the word of Yah, that means that you're dysfunctioning. And we know sometimes things come off the line and they don't function properly. This is the one problem with humanity, is that we can dysfunction. And what happens is a lot of times, men, we make these statements talking about, well, that's just the way that I am. Wrong. That's not the way that you are. That's not the way that Yahweh created you. That is just a cop out for you to say that every time that you're going through something, at least I'm not doing this. We all know these type of men. We say, hey, I might be doing that right there, but at least I'm not doing this. I might cuss you out from time to time, but at least I ain't doing cocaine. Think about it, man. How many times have we copped out and said this, I'm just like this, and this is the reason why I'm like this? I could be out there robbing banks, but at least I'm not murdering people. So you're saying this, what we're trying to do is that we're trying to lessen our dysfunction by saying that I could have a bigger dysfunction. Think about that. So we have to understand that Yahweh programmed us certain way. And when he programmed us, it's for us to function properly. And if we do have a dysfunction, that means that there's a reason that Yahweh set us on a certain ground. And why did he set us on that ground? When he set us on the ground, what it was for us to till the ground. Ain't that what the scripture said? It said there was no man to till the ground. And when we look up the word till there, it's a Hebrew word. Let me take that back. It's not a Hebrew word. When I looked up till by definition, according to www.dictionary.com, tilling is an old age method of loosening the soil before planting in order to grow crops. So Yahweh is saying that when he set us here on ground, on this earth, our purpose when we got here was that we were going to have to till. In other words, we were going to have to break some things up. So when he set us on ground, the question is, what ground are you standing on? You know, the old phrase people use, I stand on that. What are you standing on? And when you're standing on that, now you have to ask yourself, are there fruit starting to develop? And if the fruit isn't developing, that means that there's something wrong with the ground that you're standing on. So this means whatever it is that you stand on, I stand on that. You have to bring it into question. And what you have to do is that you have to start tilling it and breaking it up. And when you break the ground up, what you do is you expose what's below the surface. What did we talk about earlier? My wife said this and it was so heavy, is that we should be inspecting our foundation. So when we inspect our foundation, that means that we have to break up the very ground that we stand on. And what happens a lot of times is that we don't realize is that some of us are broken. Some men are broken. And as a free man, I want to say to you, free men. I told you I was going to get this in there, baby. So once you're free as a noun, a free man, then and only then can you as a verb free other man. So I'm trying to help you. I'm a free man that's trying to free other men. So men, we need to break up our ground. So if we're dysfunctioning and we're falling back onto this dysfunction, that means that we have to break some things up to get a better understanding. The prophet Elijah, when he was going against the prophets of Baal, according to the scriptures, it said that he repaired the altar that was broken up. Now think about it. If he repaired the altar that was broken up, that means that he still had to disassemble the altar, and then and only then can he build the altar back up. So men, if you are broken, that means that you have to be broken up, or your ground, what you stand on, has to be broken up. If it's religion and you standing on it, that has to be broken up. If you're standing on what your mama and your daddy taught you, and it's old age doctrine that has nothing to do with the scripture, that has to be broken up. If you're standing on your pride, that has to be broken up. If you're standing on just pure ignorance and I don't want to know, that has to be broken up. And what has to be exposed is what's in the soil. And a lot of times what's in the soil is weeds. And according to Jeremiah in 1:10, the scripture said, see, I have this day set thee over nations and kingdoms. Why? So that you can root out. So when you're breaking up this ground, you're going to root out, you're going to pull up the weeds. And so that you can pull down, this is what the scripture says, we have to pull down those trees that's grown inside of us. And so that you can destroy, we have to destroy these things. This is the same thing that prophet Elijah was doing. Those things that are inside of you that are erroneous and that you're holding so dear to, that is not of Yahweh, it has to be destroyed. And not only does it have to be destroyed, it has to be thrown down. We all know the phrase, when you about to throw down. Sometimes, men, you have to fight with yourself. Listen to what I'm saying. You have to fight with yourself. There's something inside of you that is not of Yahweh, and you have to start fighting against it. And then and only then, when you inspect your foundation and you break up this soil, then and only then, according to Jeremiah 1:10, can you start to build. Because now you have broke down the altar that was destroyed. And then, like the prophet Elijah did, then and only then could he build the altar. And then it says in Jeremiah 1:10, and then now he can plant. So once you plant, according to going back to Genesis 2:5, Yahweh said, for Yahweh had not sent rain upon the earth, and there was no man to till it, right? And 6 says, but the streams came up from the earth and watered the whole surface. So there it is. So once you start to break these things down that's inside of you, then and only then is Yahweh going to allow you to build and to plant. And once the things are planted, then will your ground be watered. Is that all right? Whew, I'm trying to help somebody here. So, men, what is the ground that you stand on? What is it that you saying, I stand on that? Think about it. Yahweh placed us on the ground according to the scriptures. We are up to the point where he placed us on the ground. What do you stand on? What is it that's erroneous in you that you're standing on? And the word ground there, I thought that was heavy because ground asks the question, are you grounded? Think about it. Are you grounded? And to be grounded means that you're well balanced. Are you balanced in the things of Yahweh? Are you balanced in his word? Are you balanced in accordance to what it is that Yeshua was doing in the word? Are you subjected to what it is that Yahweh desired that you do? And when you're grounded, by definition, it means to instruct someone in a subject. Men, have you sat down in the word and been instructed by Yahweh? Have your inward structure been instructed or built by Yahweh? And this is the question that you have to ask yourself. Are you grounded? Are you listening to me? Are you grounded? What ground do you stand on? By definition, we also find out that ground, to be grounded, also deals with that when we're talking about pilots and aircrafts. And when they say grounded for a pilot and aircraft, it means prohibited or prevented from flying. So now, men, is what you're standing on putting you in a position where you feel like you're not able to fly? Do you feel like you're stuck in that position that you're in? So it makes you start to ask the question, why am I not flying and abounding in the things of Yahweh? What's got me grounded right now? Do I need to break up my ground and inspect my foundation to see what type of soil am I planted in? These are the questions that you have to ask yourself. And look, the word ground and also there deals with the informal version of that, which means of a child being punished. And this is what's happening to a lot of us is like children. You're in a position because you're violating the laws of Yahweh. You're violating the rules of Yahweh. It's not that Yahweh is punishing you, but you're punishing yourself. In other words, you're grounded. Just like children, when they're grounded, that means that there's instances where you're locked away in your room and you're separated from everybody else. Do you feel like you're stagnant and stuck in one spot? And we're talking about those that are even in ministry, not only in the world, but in ministry. Do you feel like your ministry is just stunted, that is stagnant, that is stuck in this one room inside of this one little box, stuck inside of this one little church, and you're not going anywhere? That means that you need to inspect your ground, and your ground may not be fertile. That means that you need to till your ground and break it up wherever you are in life right now, whatever church you may be a part of, and ask yourself, what is in this soil that I'm standing on? Why is the shrubs and the plants and the fruits not growing right now? We have to ask ourselves that question. Have we put ourselves on punishment? Have we confined ourselves to this little box and don't want to come outside of it? You have put yourself on punishment. You are grounded. Whew, goodness gracious. And then one more definition for grounded. It's an electrical term also that deals with grounding, protects you and your property from the devastating effects of a power surge. In other words, what grounding does is it protects you from being shocked. So this is why when we see mighty men and women of God and we see and we look up to them and we believe in them so much, and we say to ourselves, wow, how did that happen to them? That means that we were shocked. And the reason that we were shocked that that happened to them, it was showing us that they weren't grounded. And when you're not grounded, what it happens is that it shocks those that are around you, and it puts them in a position where they need to inspect their ground. So if anything that I cover with you in this part 4 is men, we need to be grounded in the word of Yahweh. Male and female created he them. That's what the scripture says to us. This is the law of first mention. This means this sets the precedence of what it should be and what's going to take place in the rest of the scriptures. Yahweh set us here on this earth with the purpose and understanding that we were going to have to break some things up. And when we break up our fallow ground, then and only then will we able to see what's under the surface. A lot of us are standing on the surface of things that is not of Yahweh. Well, y'all know what that sound is right there. And also have to mention here real quick, also, this was part 4. I know y'all probably noticed this right here. We getting professional over here. My baby blessed me and got me a microphone. So Yahweh is really starting to actually spring up some fruit on this podcast. And as time goes, it's going to get better. The video quality is going to get better. The sound is going to get better. The production is going to get better. We decree it and we speak it into the atmosphere right now. And as usual, I hope this word has blessed you. And if it has blessed you, I ask that you pass it on to somebody else and help them to be the salt of the earth, and that they can also be blessed from this word. This is the only thing I ask you of. And as always, at the end, I ask that you like, share, always pause because I got to remember these things. Subscribe, and down below put a comment. See, I did it, baby. I'm a big boy now. So I hope you enjoyed this message. Come back as we get ready to go into part 5 representing grace and benefits. Come back for your grace and benefits in part 5. Shalom.